Look, Batman fans, one thing I was not expecting when reading this prequel novel is that Robert Pattinsons Batman should be joining the Fast and Furious franchise. The boy is a damn street racer. And on the other side of that, the damn Riddler's a part-time DoorDash driver. Oh, this Batman movie's gonna go hard. Hello, the Batman fans. Thanks for clicking on this video. My name is Chris. The Batman Now is only a month away, and I think a lot of us are getting extremely excited to see Matt Reeves' take on the Batman. And with the movie only being a month away, Warner Brothers is going full out with their marketing, releasing as much merchandise as possible, endless TV spots that each one gets me more excited than the last for this movie. And well, one of those promotional tie-ins that Warner Brothers decided to release on February 1st was a prequel novel to the Batman. This thing is officially made by Warner Brothers and is said to be canon in the universe, giving you a little bit of backstory before you see Robert Pattinson's Batman in his movie. And well, since lately I've just been dying for more of the Batman news, I decided to go ahead, purchase the book, read it all in its entirety, and in this video I'm going to be breaking down some of the most important information that we've learned concerning Robert Pattinson's Batman. We got a lot of information here. We basically have a better understanding of why the Riddler is targeting Bruce Wayne. We get an origin for the new Batcave in this movie, how Robert Pattinson's Batman gets the idea to dress up as a bat. All this stuff that really isn't going to be addressed in Matt Reeves' The Batman, because that takes place in Batman's second year, where they have already mentioned that this film will not be an origin story and it'll just be Batman doing his Batman thing. So I'm gonna need you guys to give me your opinions down below with everything we discuss here today concerning this prequel novel. I went ahead and read this damn book. Alright, fine, I'm lying to y'all. I listened to the Audible version, but I still had to pay 12 bucks for it. Let me know what piece of information got you the most excited. What do you think of some of this backstory involving them? And heck, if you're someone who would rather read it yourself than me tell it to you, I'll link it down below. It's a 2-hour listen, or it's a, 12-minute video that I made. Alright, so with the beginning of this Batman prequel novel book, we start off with a young Bruce Wayne who's about 10 years old. Bruce and his family are currently getting ready to leave their mansion because their father, who is currently running for mayor of Gotham City, has decided to donate the Wayne Mansion as an orphanage to go ahead and let the orphans of Gotham live inside it. Thomas Wayne turns this into like a big ceremonial event where he has press listening in on the donation. And as all this is going off, Bruce goes ahead and looks off to the group of orphan kids that'll now be living in his house. And one of those kids does happen to be the Riddler, who is just staring down Bruce Wayne. And as the book kind of describes it, the Riddler is already not very fond of Bruce because he lives this rich lifestyle, gets everything he wants, and the Riddler is kind of jealous of that. Now, I thought that was kind of interesting that the book went ahead and did that and started setting up that motivation that the Riddler will just start disliking Bruce Wayne right away at a young age because of his wealth. And it might seem like a dumb and cheesy motive just to be mad and jealous of a man who's rich, but the book later goes on to describe in further detail why the Riddler doesn't like Bruce Wayne. But the book also goes on to mention that now that the Waynes have given up their mansion, they decide to go live in Wayne Tower. So they live, I guess, at the top of that building in a penthouse, and that's where Bruce basically grew up and spent the rest of his life. And he does mention in the book he misses the mansion and wishes that they stayed there. From there, the book decides to jump to 7 years later, where Bruce Wayne is now 17 years old. He's already gone through the incident where he's lost his parents. He's also attending a private boarding school and has come home to Gotham City for the summer. This is also where we find out that Alfred is basically the guardian of Bruce Wayne and is taking care of him ever since his parents died. Not just that, but Alfred also seems to be pretty involved in Wayne Enterprises, lending a hand there. But probably the most interesting part about Andy Serkis's Alfred is he is described as a former British intelligence operative who likes to spend his mornings working out with Bruce Wayne and sparring with him, teaching him different fight styles that he's learned over the years. The book mentions he's very knowledgeable in karate, judo, taekwondo, and he enjoys teaching Bruce Wayne a mixture of those martial arts. The book even kind of shows you Alfred's joking side by him calling it Bruce Jitsu, and 17-year-old Bruce Wayne is not a big fan of that name. It's also mentioned the reason Alfred is teaching him this is not necessarily so that he has the strength to beat up other people, but just for disciplinary reasons, and just like his parents were attacked, so that one day Bruce could defend himself if anything were to happen to him. I did think it was kind of funny that in the book they specifically mentioned that Robert Pattinson's Batman, when he works out, is working out not for bulk, but to be lean and for speed. And that should really let you know the kind of Batman they're going for here. They're not trying to replicate the Ben Affleck type of Batman who's just muscle-bound strong. This Batman Batman will have strength, but they're focusing more on his speed and agility. Once those morning workout routines with Alfred are over, Bruce Wayne decides to spend the rest of his day going down to the very bottom of the basement in Wayne Tower, where the book lets us know that ever since the age of 13, Bruce Wayne has discovered this secret entryway underneath Wayne Tower that leads into an abandoned railway system. This is the new Batcave that we've been seeing in a lot of the trailers, and I gotta admit, I was never a fan of this underground abandoned subway that becomes the Batcave, but the way it's described in this book makes a lot of sense. This was a private railway system that was connected from Wayne Manor, the mansion, all the way to Wayne Tower that was built by Bruce Wayne's ancestors. This is how they would get to and from work without having to deal with Gotham City traffic, and then over time they just stopped using it, so now it's become abandoned underneath Wayne Tower where no one really knows about it except the Waynes. And like I said, since Bruce has known about this since he was 13 years old and is kind of his place where he goes to from escape from the real world of Wayne Enterprises, being alone, not having a lot of friends, the book mentions that he adds workstations, lights, a desk, a computer, because the way the book describes Bruce Wayne at this age is he's not very social. He doesn't go out and seek friendships. He doesn't even like talking to Alfred all that much. He kind of just likes sticking to himself. And although he is a straight A student that ends up on the dean list of his school all the time, he does find school to be rather boring except for a couple of subjects, one of them being chemistry. That's actually one of the first things he builds in his Batcave, is a little laboratory where he can just experiment and do different science projects because he finds that fun. It's even said that he'll take random samples of rocks and mysterious substances he finds on the street of Gotham, brings them back home to his lab, and likes discovering what that stuff is made out of, and it's said most of the time it was just random chewing gum on the street. I thought that was a nice little touch they added in there because it really goes to show you the detective side of this Bruce Wayne, that he's just very fascinated with chemistry and compounds, and this will obviously lead him to make his smoke bombs, as well as showcasing that he'll make a great detective by figuring out different substances that he'll find at crime scenes. The other thing that was revealed here is that Bruce Wayne had actually been working on his Batmobile ever since the age of 16. It's said that one day in Gotham City, Bruce Wayne found himself a really old vintage muscle car, and over the years he has been spending his time rebuilding it, not so it looks exactly like it once was, but focusing on making it better than it ever was. The book mentions that Bruce Wayne doesn't get any pleasure out of spending millions of dollars on a super fast car, and he would rather make a car himself that's super fast with his own two hands. So at age 16, he's not actually trying to build the Batmobile, he's just trying to build the fastest car as humanly possible, always adding in different material to the car, switching out the engine, lubricating everything up. Honestly, Dominic Toretto would be very proud of young Bruce Wayne. But from there, the book decides to change POVs and even gives us a little bit more backstory into Edward Nygma, the Riddler. We also find out what his life was like growing up in the orphanage, where now he's in high school. He's described as being a terrible student, getting lowest grades possible, barely passing every time he moves up a grade. But of course, the one thing he does find pleasure in is puzzles. It's also described that the Riddler is constantly bullied by kids at the orphanage just because of how weird he is. But in this section of the book where it's detailing the Riddler growing up, it gives us a really good idea of why he exactly hates Batman, and along with all the other kids in this orphanage. One of the main reasons all the kids at the orphanage hate Bruce Wayne is because they are living in his house. They are constantly reminded of the great life Bruce Wayne had. Basically, imagine if you were living in the mansion of someone rich, but you had to share it with like hundreds of kids, and you get to see what the rich kid's room looks like, his closet, his toy bin, his bathroom, and you see that every day of your life, and you know that this place isn't really yours, but it belonged to another rich kid. Even to make matters worse, at the very entrance of the mansion, they still have a photo up of Bruce Wayne and his family as a remembrance of them giving up their house to this orphanage. So basically every day of Riddler's life, he has looked at a giant photo of Bruce Wayne's face. Pair that up with the book describing that at this high school age, the Riddler is currently working as a food delivery driver, where no, he doesn't have a car, but he does have like this rusty bike that fails on him all the time, but it's the only way he can make money is just going around Gotham City and delivering food to different people. I was really hoping the book would go ahead and kind of maybe hint or dive a little deeper into the Waynes being corrupt, as that's what's being hinted at in a lot of the trailers, but really there is no mention at all of the Waynes being corrupt in this prequel novel. The book now cuts us back to 17-year-old Bruce Wayne enjoying his summer, finally building his his car the way he wants it, to where he enjoys taking it out on the street and going as fast as he possibly can with it. A little too fast because he gets pulled over by the cops. And this whole interaction between Bruce Wayne and the Gotham City police was great, because as soon as the police find out that they actually pulled over Bruce Wayne, the cops kind of have a conversation with themselves that they don't even bother giving a ticket to this kid because he won't learn a lesson from it, since he has all the money in the world to pay for this ticket. So even though Bruce Wayne was going way over the speed limit, he just got off with a warning, and that actually bugged Bruce Wayne. He didn't like that he was getting special treatment from the cops. He didn't like that they thought just because he could afford the ticket, he didn't deserve one. And it also bugged him that these were the police officers in charge of protecting Gotham City when they would let people like him get off with a warning. I thought that was a great character moment for Bruce Wayne in the book, and kind of gave you an idea of his mindset. But after those events, Bruce does eventually want to take his car to a racetrack so he can test not only his driving abilities, but how fast he's made his car. This is again where Bruce Wayne runs into some trouble because he is underage and not allowed to be part of the race. But along with that, the officials of the race recognize him as Bruce Wayne, and they just kind of laugh at his face at him wanting to be part of a race when they say, "Don't you have a chauffeur, kid? You've never really driven a day of your life." This is where the book starts to hint at us that Bruce Wayne hates every time he's recognized in Gotham City. He hates whenever he goes out and people say, "Oh, you're Bruce Wayne," and they automatically have this assumption of him that he's a spoiled rich kid who lost his family.
Night. Christ, not again.
Hey, Mr. Wayne.
I thought that was really cool, because before he even gets the idea of becoming Batman, he just hates the idea of people always knowing who he is and assuming his personality from that. Eventually, this leads us into a little subplot where Bruce Wayne gets involved in some illegal street racing because he meets a girl named Dex, who one day just decided to randomly race Bruce Wayne at a stoplight when she looked at his car, and they got along from there. A couple of interesting things about the way Bruce Wayne interacts with women is he mentions here he's not very good at it. At the age of 17, he does like Dex and finds her attractive, but he can't find the right words or the best approach to let her know that. I thought that was kind of fun that he's not exactly the suave Bruce Wayne that we mostly know. And like I was mentioning, where Bruce doesn't like to be recognized, he goes to these street races kind of in disguise, where he wears a hat and clothes that wouldn't necessarily be associated with a rich kid. So yeah, no one recognizes him during these street races, but one incident that does occur while a bunch of kids are racing is that one driver almost accidentally hit and ran over Edward Nygma, the Riddler, as he was doing one of his food deliveries. This of course pisses the Riddler off, gets him really mad because they're doing something illegal and they almost hurt him. It's mentioned here that Riddler recognizes a lot of these street racing kids from his high school because they happen to be the kids with parents who have money. This is where the Riddler decides it would be no point in calling the police because again, they would be able to afford the tickets or the penalties, eventually deciding to take matters into his own hands, planting a little explosive device on one of the cars, Dex, the girl that Bruce Wayne happens to like. From here, we find Bruce in the middle of his race doing exceptionally well on his way of getting first place until he notices that Dex, her car, starts to light on fire, where Bruce Wayne then pulls over and does his best to save her and get her out of that car. And two things happened that night. One, the Riddler realized he liked getting revenge on people who deserved it, and also Bruce Wayne found it way more thrilling of saving someone's life than he did from racing and going hundreds of miles per hour on the road. The other thing I thought was cool about this street racing Bruce Wayne subplot is by the time he goes home at the end of the day and has decided he's no longer going to street race, Alfred is already there waiting for him in his Batcave. We find out that Alfred has always known about Bruce Wayne's little secret cave, and also that he's been sneaking out at night to go street racing, not only showing you how smart Alfred is, but how much of an involved parent he is. From there, the book does decide to take another little time jump where we find out what Bruce Wayne does after high school, and it's said here that once he graduates high school and attends college, Bruce Wayne is constantly changing his schools and majors, where one semester Bruce Wayne will be studying to be a biologist, then the next one a chemist, then a forensic scientist. And every time he changes majors, he changes schools because he prefers going to the top school in that subject. This is kind of where we get a little bit of that Bruce Wayne travels the world, because when he's changing colleges, he's not just going to different colleges in the US. It's said here he goes to different colleges around the world. And because of the way he was raised with Alfred, that every morning he does a little workout routine. In every country he goes to, he decides to learn their martial arts. So basically Basically, all of Bruce Wayne's college career, he's spending it going around the world and learning different martial arts and different fields of studies until he graduates. I thought that was a brilliant way to kind of do the Bruce Wayne building his mind story. It really just seemed like it was just going to be Alfred train this Bruce Wayne and that's it. And I'm like, as cool as that is, I don't think Alfred would be enough to build a Batman. So it's cool that Robert Pattinsons Batman still goes around the world to find his training. While all of that was going on with Bruce Wayne and him traveling the world, we find out that the Riddler, Edward Nygma, after he graduates high school, he takes all his DoorDash money to go to school to be a forensic accountant. And I thought that was a great touch for the Riddler. He loves numbers and solving puzzles, and a forensic accountant basically goes ahead and investigates briberies, fraud, money laundering, which I'm sure will eventually connect him to how he finds out about a lot of the scummed and corrupt politicians in Gotham City. One little funny side note about this version of the Riddler, it's said that he again has no friends and is socially awkward around people, so he likes spending his time going garage selling and trying to buy old greeting cards, specifically some that have rhymes or puns in them, and that kind of connects back to the Batman because we've seen in the trailers the Riddler leaves behind greeting cards with his riddles. But here's the point of the book now where we have adult Bruce Wayne and adult Riddler. I would love to say the book just stays as detailed as it has been, but it kind of just rushes things to get them to where they need to be. We find out Bruce Wayne after college comes back home because he loves Gotham City. It's almost like he's tethered to it and can't see himself living anywhere else. Although it does mention in the book that he has no interest in running Wayne Enterprises, which kind of sucks because I like a Bruce Wayne who's also business savvy and can earn his keep instead of just getting these royalty checks from Wayne Enterprises, but whatever. But it's now here as adults that these two characters decide to do something more with themselves, with Bruce Wayne becoming Batman, where it's described that Bruce Wayne decides to build his Batsuit the same way he did his Batmobile for speed, using Wayne Enterprise resources to look for the strongest and lightest material to make his suit, and also designing it after a bat because of the cave he's in has always had bats, and since this has just kind of become his sanctuary, bats have kind of become a comforting thing for him. On the other side of that, Riddler has decided to put his plans in action and decided the first thing he wants to do is burn down the orphanage where he came from. It's something that he apparently always saw on his way to work, and he was just tired of being reminded of that place, so one day he pulls the fire alarm of that orphanage, getting all the kids out, and then he burns it to the point that it's no longer usable. Bringing us back to Batman, who now has his prototype suit build. His first mission and night out on the job was stopping a burglar from going into a jewelry store where he was using explosive gel. Batman does happen to stop the criminal and takes a sample of this explosive gel to go ahead and take back to his lab to figure out where it came from. Through the course of some events, he actually finds out that the person responsible for this gel was none other than his childhood crush, Dex, the woman he would do street races with. And you would think since Batman finds someone from his youth who's his childhood friend he had a crush on, he would go soft on them and want to help them out to not be a criminal. The boy right away goes ahead and snitches to Gotham PD. That should let you know Batman is all about justice over the poo-tang. But through some more investigating, Batman does find out that Dex is actually being framed and blackmailed to do this because her father is in jail and is working with Carmen Falcone and the Penguin. That's actually where we get a mention of them, and we find out that Carmen Falcone is actually like the head mob boss right now of Gotham, where the Penguin works under him, or I should say for him. There's even a section in this book where Penguin is terrified of being in the same room as Carmen Falcone, so that should kind of give you an idea of the villain this guy is gonna be. Through the course of some events, we find out Batman is able to go ahead and prove innocent Dex and her father because he anonymously starts working with one member in the police department, feeding them information about criminals, and since Batman is so well detailed and provides them with a lot of evidence, the police are happy to be working with Batman. At least this one random police officer, not the entire department. And no, it's not Commissioner Gordon, it's a person by the name of Judas Durr. From there, the book basically ends with Batman being able to set Dex up with some charity money so that she's free to leave Gotham City, where Dex even mentions she's gonna go live in Metropolis with her father now, name dropping one of the hometowns for Superman. She even says she's gonna attempt to get a job at LexCorp Race Team, letting you know Lex Luthor exists in this universe and has a subdivision of just race car drivers. That's some great world building right there, especially since we've seen set photos of people dressed as Superman and Wonder Woman on the set of the Batman, so it seems like these other Justice League members are out there, they're just not actually working together. But at the very end of the book, it just jumps 2 years with Batman giving up a bat signal to the police department so they can contact him whenever they want. And as far as this prequel novel book goes, I think it was very well detailed to the early days of Bruce Wayne and kind of giving you a good motive for the Riddler. I think it was honestly such a fascinating listen. Of course, towards the end, it started kind of just rushing things and didn't want to give too much information of Batman. That's probably because they do have the prequel series coming to HBO Max, where we'll be following the Gotham Police Department the first year Batman is out in the city. So I wouldn't be surprised if things in that show conflict with what we learn in this novel book. But nonetheless, I think there was still a lot of great information thrown in there. Let me know what you guys thought. What was your favorite little tidbit in here? Is there anything you actually didn't like? I'm happy to hear from you guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.